Hello, everyone. I think it's fair to say that technological disruption today is no longer an occasional shock. It's become actually today more of a structural constant in our daily life. And what we are experiencing today is no longer just tech, it's actually geotech. And we can clearly see how geotech is shaping the way nations are designing strategy and even defining sovereignty and security. And we see this clearly exemplified in the ways that competition today is more about control of supply chain and access to advanced technology. We also see it in the rise of these a new central of influence globally that can no longer be ignored. So let's dive right in. First question, and I will direct it to you, Your Excellency Professor Lee. Given your experience in policy making, how can we reshape national strategies in a way that will celebrate resilience and agility in entities that will keep up with this constantly changing world?
Okay, good morning. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me here. Excellent place.
Thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, recently, the policies and the regulations have just been lagging behind the technological change. Korea operates to address this, operates the regulatory sandbox system. This system allows for 2 years testing of the developed technologies and services in a specific region. If no issues are found, the regulations are revised or abolished. Because the technological change is so rapid, I think the policies and regulations need to be operated as flexibly as possible. For example, Korea has designated 12 strategic technologies and established a system to flexibly and rapidly talent to develop these technologies. To dynamically, efficiently respond to the rapid technological change, I think the institutional reforms and budgetary support, including incentives, need to be implemented simultaneously. A more fundamental strategy is to nurture domain experts with solid fundamental knowledge. They can quickly adapt to technological changes and start business in cutting-edge technologies.
Thank you very much. Which will lead me next to Your Excellency, Dr. Mohamed. How would you, from a security point of view, allow this constant change of, let's say, strategy to actually celebrate agility?
So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm honored to be with you all here. Thank you very much for this great forum. Again, great added value of those points that we just actually mentioned in that perspective. Today, UAE, as per the vision of the leadership, is moving towards an AI nation. And that AI nation dictates to have technology as an integral part of all of our lifestyles. Not only from a government or data centers or hyperscalers or many of those aspects, but as a matter of fact, it has to be in a DNA and the hygienes of things that we do. I'm sure everybody heard of the new curriculum of the education where we will be adding many of those AI. I'm sure everybody heard of the cybersecurity and many of the points that we do, be it in the cyberpulse and the awareness that we do. So the preparation towards that AI nation, alhamdulillah, have started a long time ago and continuing to become mature enough to everybody's in that perspective. Now, our national cybersecurity strategies focuses on 5 main pillars. Those pillars, one is the governance, policies, procedures, legislations, guidelines, any of those aspects, which is a very important part of all of the things that we do. What distinguishes UAE about those regulations, it's agile enough that allow it to be actually adaptive in many of those great visions that the leadership has put. And those regulations, as a matter of fact, we do not set it ourselves as a government policymakers in that perspective. We always open it for a great sharing, a great partnership with PPP, public-private people partnership. And that's our main point, as a matter of fact, in doing any of those regulations. Alhamdulillah, it really added this agility sense on it. The other pillars, or the 4 pillars, one is about technology, innovations, and really using those technology and innovation. Another pillar is building, reskilling, upskilling. We don't want those people who will miss the train of AI to really just stand out there. We need to ensure that they are an integral part of the society and continuing into doing great things, becoming an added value into this society. And one of the main pillars that we do in our national cybersecurity is the mission that we are focused on, which is the secure and defend. Well, that's what we are actually doing. The whole nation is moving towards that digitization, and we need to ensure a first line of defense is that defense and secure of the people, of the technology. Alhamdulillah, continuing many of those aspects. We cannot do this ourselves. We need everybody like this great dialogue to enhance our partnership and to continue doing so many of those aspects.
أكيد. Your Excellency, James, building up on what His Excellency Dr. Mohamed said about building capital or human capital, how can you see today in your role as a head of academic sector, how do you see national strategy can benefit you in that way?
Well, good morning, and thank you very much for inviting me to join this panel, and thank you for those previous words. I think when we view security in the new geotech world, we need to think more about what is happening outside the borders. If you look historically, of course, security was often considered in relationship to territory. Now we're much more about protecting people and values and ideas, and a lot of it's outside your control of your own boundaries. And we see that, from the cyber security world that we've just heard about, but also from the data centers and the supply chains and those other threats. And what is clear is really that need to join up across all our organizations and entities who provide security and safety and defense to a nation. And it's not about just giving up on the sort of old-fashioned military, if one puts it that way, because you need that. That's at the core of it. But then you build on top of it to provide people who are aware of information operations, the way that deep fakes are changing the influence campaigns being run against our people. And then when you look at that in terms of how you then want to educate them, to the heart of your question, we need to educate all the people involved in security and defense to take a holistic view of it. One of the roles for Rabdan Academy is to do that here in the UAE, is to bring all the entities together, to try and form networks of trust, to try and close the boundaries between our organizations, to make sure we're capable of defeating that threat. But we've got a wider role, I think, in trying to educate the general population as well, the community, because it's the community who are often being targeted in this new form of attack. It's the influence operations. It's about the will of the people to resist whatever hostile intent there is against you. And I do think we've got a long way to go to try and encourage our people to be more critical, frankly, of the information they're seeing. And when you see cybersecurity type issues and you see that people fall for the very simplest hacks, the very simplest phishing emails, they fall for those. Can you imagine in 5 years' time when we have very sophisticated deep fake attacks on us, on our values and our society? If we haven't started inoculating people against that now, we're going to fall for it. So we've got quite a long way to go in the education sense of education, both our own teams and also the wider community.
Very nice, which drive me kind of to feed my curiosity in a way that moving from there, where we understand that national strategy should be flexible, as you guys all agreed on, and should be about the wholesome of the community, can we think of another or of a new national indicator other than GDP from an entrepreneurial perspective, Abdallah, that would measure nations' readiness and nations' adaptiveness to this continuous change that we're witnessing today because of technology?
I think so. You know, with technology, it's always a wave, it's always a cycle. And I always like to tell people there is nothing new with the disruption cycle that we're seeing as it exists today. If we look at one of the earliest technologies was the discovery of fire. That was a technology at its time, maybe as disruptive as AI when it was found. The only difference is that as we go forward in time, what happens is distribution of technology becomes much faster. And due to the rails and networks and easier access of distribution now, we're seeing that the impact of technology is sort of multiplying folds on folds with what we're seeing with AI today. And that sort of, what I'm seeing is that sort of tucking the entrepreneurial world and the government world and everybody in the middle sort of coming closer together with on challenges like AI and things that are in this space. For us in business, as we come from the industry, there's always sort of a hidden metric that we always chase after, which is, we call it IR, it's iteration rate. With any technology you're building, there is a cycle. You build, you go to market, you fail, and you build again. That's a very normal cycle that is followed day in, day out in any technological business. That cycle, the measurement of point A to point Z is called an iteration cycle or an iteration rate. The faster you can iterate, the better technology you have. And what we're saying now with AI and what we're seeing with the new technologies is we are able to really iterate tens of times a day. If we think back, I mean, everybody in this room might be old enough to have had a Nokia before. So if we remember, like when we had those phones, they used to iterate them once every few years. There was almost no change. They were always the same phone. Maybe they changed the colors once every few years. Now we're looking at our phones, and it's almost a completely new set of technology every 6 months. So the iteration rate is really shrinking in a way that is very worrisome to technology companies, because that means a lot of people get dusted out of the industry very much faster than they would usually do. But that also means that people like Dr. Mohamed have to have a lot more sleepless nights trying to figure out these iterations that are happening and the gap that leaves behind for sort of the bad folk that are trying to dive into those gaps. And that's what I think.
Very wonderfully. Then let me redirect it to you, Your Excellency, Dr. Mohamed. From a security point of view, what's another or a new national indicator other than GDP would you think of?
So definitely, with this new technologies, we need to adapt, we need to be agile, we need to flexibly enhance and tailor our business needs, our academic needs, our many of the things that we see, as a matter of fact, in those aspects. And yes, there need to be new maturity level indicators, for example. They need to be definitely a new matrices that we need to actually follow. As a matter of fact, recently we have released and working on the AI maturity level. This is based on Gartner, based on so many of those entities who are actually level as well as weight how much the maturity each one of those entities are really adapting to these technological aspects. We in the cybersecurity, we have as well our we call it the information assurance metrics, and this information assurance ensures those data poisoning, model poisoning or model attacks, or any of the new technological aspects are really met, tested, validated with the new technological requirements, compliances that we are actually really working on. We definitely, I agree with the minister when he mentioned, usually governance policies tend to be delayed after the technology actually surpasses many of those aspects. Yet, we sometimes need to do this, as a matter of fact, to see how the technology will definitely impact some of those aspects. And accordingly, we adapt and we adjust those policies. And that's what we are doing. I see in the future, definitely we need a new matrices, a new policies in those aspects. As a matter of fact, here in our information assurance as well as cybersecurity standards, we have adapted and we released new patches that focuses on quantum encryption, for example. And this is a needed, again, hyperscaler aspects that we saw the legacy conventional encryptions need to be adapted in this aspects. And this is where countering many of those aspects, alhamdulillah, dictate to us to really work on those new policies. Yet all of those need to be agile enough to allow innovation. Businesses to us is a very important GDPs in those aspects, as a matter of fact. We need to allow upskilling and reskilling. Rabdan Academy and so many, alhamdulillah, academic sectors here in UAE really working greatly in making sure this is becomes as a whole nation approach. That's what we are actually already seeing and working on those aspects. But in order to do those governings, we need the partnership of everybody. You cannot just come and dictate one single policy because of a specific compromise or specific things happening here and there. We need to have this partnership in order to create the right policy at the right time and dictate it or work it, partner with everybody to ensure its compliances as well.
And I'm sure a lot of entities are inspired by what you just said
Definitely.
and are already thinking of new ways to measure it.
Alhamdulillah.
Your Excellency, Professor Hili, from a policy making at some point of view, what would you think a good new national indicator other than GDP would be?
Okay, I think the most common indicator for assessing each country's R&D capabilities is the ratio of the R&D budget to GDP, I think. And I think another important thing is from the future-oriented perspective, the challenging research project is quite important. So in that sense, the budget for challenging project should be needed to be a good indicator, I think. And also, the important thing is the number of the bachelor's and master's and doctoral degrees produced annually in the strategic technology field would be a good indicator. I also think about another indicator. The number and value of the commercialized technologies, new technologies, not just typical technologies, right? As well as the number and the value of the IPOs and the M&As of new technology companies are a very practical indicator to assess the country's R&D capability, I think.
Wonderful. Your Excellency James, His Excellency Professor Hili touched upon that one of the matrices should be measuring the number of degrees that are produced educationally. From your now academic, formerly was defense and now academic experience, how do you think we can embed this mindset of let's celebrate long life learning, let's celebrate this adaptiveness of technology when we're building this new human capital strategy in a way?
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question because we're also seeing life expectancy go longer, and if we don't embrace lifelong learning, we're going to find ourselves as dinosaurs in our own world, and that's a pretty frightening place to be. I sort of think, well, look, in 50 years' time, are we going to have the stately dance of diploma, bachelor, master's, PhD? Is the current construct globally for higher education really fit for the future? And I think there's got to be some significant questions about that. And we're seeing it. We're seeing it in the world of professional certification, micro-credentials, stacking your micro-credentials, closer partnership between academia and industry. And one can see a future model in which there is much more regular engagement, but partnership effectively between industry. I mean, industry and academia. There already is in many areas, but you can see more of that happening, I think, and perhaps finding ways of giving people academic qualifications, but built up over long time periods. Because I think we've got to align further the interests of academia with the interests of industry. The only challenge we then face is what happens in the humanities? What happens in the things that make us human? And of course, in the great debate about if AI is going to take all of these sorts of jobs, then the things left for humans are going to be about the human side, the artistic. So we mustn't throw away the core things that make us human within our education system, just because one framework suits one particular part of our industries or economies. It doesn't mean that it's all going to. So we may have to be, frankly, just much more flexible across the whole way we think of injecting skills into people. And we've slightly got to change the narrative about it. We've got to make it very socially acceptable, very economically driven to embrace these things. So show the economics of art. There is huge economics in art. We mustn't discard it. We mustn't throw it away as part of it. And of course, you see it here with investment in museums, in art here, that recognition of the key importance within our economies of this as well. So we mustn't just look at the technology is what I'm saying. We've got to think of systems that work for everyone.
Yeah. And to you, Abdallah, I'm sure as an owner of a tech company, you would be celebrated this kind of mindset of let's adapt technology. But how would you be able to kind of help and support embedding this mindset to the nation?
Well, as tech businesses, I don't feel like we need to convince anyone of technology anymore. If you wait, you're just late. I don't think technology is a matter of fact now. I think with my generation, we've had the first technology-first generation. My son's generation is the first AI-native generation. And life is going to look very, very different. I mean, to James's point, are we going to have people go through 20 years of education to get a job? Definitely not. I think with technology, we're rendering most of the educational system that exists as it exists today obsolete. And there was this promise usually with formal education as it came out that if you were to go into 12 years of high school and 4 years of university and I don't know how many years of master's and PhD, you're going to get a good paying job. We see 14-year-old kids making more money on Fortnite now than PhDs in certain spaces. So that definitely is going to really shift how we look at it. And I believe it's created sort of, at least what we see as a tech hirer, it's created two separate problems for two different age groups. I think for people 30 upwards, the biggest challenge is to unlearn, is learning how to unlearn everything they used to do in the past and really learning how to redo it in a different way. And that's like an open question to everyone here. Like when you think about when was the last time you unlearned something or you changed your mind about something, I think it becomes very provocative. And the question for the younger generation is they honestly now have no precedent. Nobody actually knows what they should be studying. We can't come and tell kids who are 10 years old or 15 years old, please go get a degree in physics or in engineering or in math, because a computer is going to be able to do that 200,000 times better than you any day. So what do you actually do? So this is a generation that sort of has lost precedent, and I think that's also a massive challenge with technology. And like I said previously, I think it just gets down with technology to, because in the past we also had the concept of technology brain exporters like India, like different places in the world, and then places where implementation happens.
Yeah.
So you'd find a lot of the brain power move from one place to another. Now that gap is also dying. So you find somewhere like the UAE, we're a smaller nation, but we're building the top-of-the-line LLMs, top-of-the-line SLMs, top-of-the-line chip manufacturing right now. So that brain also capacity is sort of centralizing. So that's how I see it, or that's how we view it from an industry point of
Wonderfully,
view.
and that leads me to direct it to you, Your Excellency Dr. Mohamed. In a life where a mindset of technology adaptiveness, as Abdallah mentioned, is the new common thing, from a security perspective, how do you see managing this mindset change in a way?
So definitely, national security focuses on many aspects of those securities, be it economical, social, cyber, or many of those. It's very important to understand that technology have surpasses as well as integrated across all of those aspects of life. We see it in our sectors, for example, from oil and gas to energy, to education, to healthcare, to aviation, to so many of those sectors today adapting this technology. And cascading to that, there is a great manpowers who are actually really adapting this technology and working on a low-code, no-code aspect, as Abdallah mentioned. You don't need definitely in some of those positions someone who knows or have a PhD in that aspect, but at least the educational part as one of those maturity levels or indicators nationwide, global-wide, need definitely to adapt many of those aspects. Now, national security is a very important to really have a first line of defense, and that's our people. Our people are still our first line of defense. That includes the sovereignties that we use, that includes the territorial aspects that we actually read to integrally work together with many of those aspects, and that includes the loyalty that we need to spread across many of our society, and that's what we are, alhamdulillah, doing here in UAE. If you see, definitely we are adapting those new technologies. We're working and bringing more and more, but those essence of our nationalism is always and will always stay there, and that's what we call it the culture. And this is where our culture of cybersecurity and programs that we are actually already adapting here and there, such as the Cyber Pulse, something that really start from the younger ages to send this message of the importance of national security. And again, I repeat that, we cannot do this ourselves. We need everybody to work in many of those aspects with us. Private sector, public sectors, people, society, non-government organizations, many of them, they are working on that aspects. And this is the first line of defense. We saw lately many of the conflicts happened and erupted across our geopolitical as well as geo-economical aspects. There is one common thing in all of those warfare. And I'm sure the professor here will definitely agree with me and the minister in those aspects. Cyber warfare was a part of all of those conflicts. I'm here not referring only to deepfake that actually erupted and allowed so many things to change ways of dealing with many of those information warfare. I'm referring to even espionage aspects that happen. I'm referring to APTs, things that advanced persistent threats comes into your network and work into many of those aspects. I'm referring even to cyber criminals who've been proxies of those state or non-state actors using many of those techniques and tactics and procedures that those entities are using in order to penetrate in many of those networks. We've seen this, and we continually nowadays seeing many of those adaptation of cyber warfare. This is where we need that national security, that first line of defense, which is the people, and this is where we need everybody to help us in that perspective, definitely.
Wonderful. Your Excellency, Professor Hili, we heard it from an entrepreneurial perspective, an academic, and then a security perspective. In your opinion, how can we kind of adapt this mindset of adapting technology and also in the meantime keeping an eye on what's dangerous and what's not from a policy-making point of view?
So you mean the embracing the technology disruption, something, right? Okay. So when we embark on something new, regardless of whether it is disruptive or not, there is always a fear of failure. Okay, so the people tend to fear change. So I think the leaders need to demonstrate with a reasonable justification that embracing changes in our society and technology would be beneficial, right? So to the promoting the reasonable attitude toward embracing the changes through the various media outlets and public hearings will help foster this culture. To foster this culture, I think it seems necessary to showcase the successful stories of countries and companies that embrace change throughout the scientific and technological history development. Okay, so by making it easily understandable to students and the general public through like AI tutors, we can effectively foster a change that embraces the change.
Wonderful.
I think that's it.
Wonderful, thank you. And so building up on this fear concept, Abdallah, I would direct this to you. How can we reduce of that fear and kind of steer public and private investments towards what I would like to call resilience capital or resilience investment that would allow the entire nation to benefit from this constant change that technology is bringing?
I'm not an expert on fear, but I mean, as the UAE has demonstrated, honestly, in excellent leadership in the sense of pioneering uncharted territory when it comes to technologies, when it comes to investing into new spaces. It's on to us now to follow up on, like Dr. Mohamed said, the leadership's direction and the doors that have been opened. And it just serves to remind ourselves always that the single indicator of superiority globally, historically, has always been execution on technology. Whether it's been, 10,000 years ago or today, we still see that no matter the size of a nation, no matter what kind of affiliations that nation has, the ability of that nation to sort of execute technologies faster is the single decider of where does that nation place in sort of a power table. So it comes down to us to start thinking about what are all of those open frontiers that we are able to sort of, one, as businesses capitalize, and those now do exist, in abundance. Dr. Mohamed would tell you that now with the re-emergence of the AI layer, it's created tons of new opportunities that 2 years ago simply just never existed. And that comes down to us to sort of start running with those points. And that's how we see it as a business as well. That's where we are trying to position and run. Like I said, I believe the UAE has provided an excellent infrastructure and atmosphere to do this. It's just on to the executors to execute.
Wonderful. On our last remaining 3 minutes, I would like to direct the last question to Dr. Mohamed, Your Excellency. We spoke about national security and how our people are our first line of defense. But there is this new paradigm that's coming up where they say because technology is a constant disruption, then that means nations need to change their sovereignty strategy. From a sovereignty perspective, what do you have to say, and to what extent do you agree with that?
So, again, back to that national security red lines, if I may say. Definitely, we need to adapt and cope with so many of those disruptive things happening. Technology have changed our GDPs. Technology have actually promised so many things that we are adding into many of the things that we do. In the national security, there are some giving points that we cannot compromise. From the loyalty, for example, from the sovereignties of the land, from the integral type of territorial aspects, from going back to Hili Forum and going back to the legacy that we are actually build our heritage on. Many of those things will always stay and will always be there as entrenched on the people and the humanity of this land. Alhamdulillah, will always continue on having many of those aspects. Now, when it deals with those economical things, academic things, definitely some of the changes of those to become agile enough adapting to those technology, definitely the national security is always agile enough to this to ensure those progressions that's happening and help the GDP of the UAE, for example, and many of those aspects. And as a matter of fact, we've seen this. Our national security and our leaders, alhamdulillah, they are aware enough with a great vision of adapting so many things in this, be it in the economical, the startups, and many of the things that we are actually really focusing on. Having UAE as a small state, but at the same time really influencing so many things across, alhamdulillah, the region and even the globe. Having so many, alhamdulillah, today, for example, the ECSSR things that they are actually doing in many of the publications that really used to be a reference to so many strategies worldwide. We in the cybersecurity, UAE cybersecurity model have been adapted to more than 25 nations. Alhamdulillah, becoming number one in cybersecurity. Today, our cybersecurity framework is taught, is worked with so many of those nations because of the agility, because of the economical aspects that we did. We're not only focusing on cybersecurity and security of the nation, but also having a resiliency factor of it. And that's what you need. You cannot stop all of those attacks. You need to build a resilience that allows you to continue, adapt, and alhamdulillah, even progress in many of those things. Well, that's what we are doing here.
صح. And to be honest, with such rich minds and rich experiences, even a 1-hour session would not be enough. However, unfortunately, the time is up and we have to end this wonderful session. You guys gave a lot for the people to think of, and I'm sure there is a lot of questions that would follow after the session. Thank you very much for your time, truly.
Thank you.